I live in northern Minnesota, the kind of place where winter isn't a season, it's a warning. I moved there because I wanted quiet, space, distance from people. I work remotely, and the cabin I rented sat at the edge of a frozen tree line, backed up against miles of untouched forest. No neighbors close enough to see, no traffic, just trees, snow, and silence. At first, it felt peaceful, safe even. That changed the night the blizzard hit. The weather alert started early that morning. Heavy snowfall, whiteout conditions, travel not advised. By evening, the wind had picked up so hard the cabin walls creaked like they were breathing. Snow slammed into the window sideways, fast and relentless. I made dinner, lit the fireplace, and told myself I'd ride it out. I would survive storms before. Around 9 p.m. that night, the power went out. The lights snapped off all at once, plunging the cabin into darkness so sudden it felt physical. The heater died. The internet cut out. All I had left was the fireplace and my phone, already losing signal. I didn't panic. Not yet. I set candles around the living room and tried to distract myself. Read, listened to the wind, but something about that storm felt different. The wind didn't just howl. It pulsed, like it was circling the cabin, testing it. Around 10:30, I heard the first sound that didn't belong. Footsteps. Not inside, outside, slow, crunching. I froze on the couch, candle shaking in my hand. It couldn't be footsteps. No one was crazy enough to be walking through that storm. I stood and moved closer to the window, careful not to make noise. The glass was frosted around the edges, snow clinging to it in thick sheets. I wiped the small circle clear with my sleeve and looked out. Nothing, just white darkness and blowing snow. I told myself the wind had shifted snow off the roof. That's all. I stepped back, then I saw it. A shadow passed across the window. Not fast, not sudden, walking. Tall. Too tall. I felt my stomach drop. I pressed my face closer to the glass, heart pounding so loud I was sure it could be heard outside. The snowstorm swallowed everything, but for a brief moment, the wind slowed, just enough, and I saw the shape again. It moved from left to right, smooth, deliberate. Whatever it wasn't struggling against the wind. It was walking through it. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a candle. My mind raced through every explanation that made sense. A moose, a bear. But none of them walked upright. None of them moved like that. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, aiming it at the window. The beam cut through the frost and snow. And that's when I saw the tracks. One set, deep, perfectly spaced, leading up to my cabin, and stopping right below the window. Not circling, not passing by, stopping. I didn't sleep that night, and sat in the living room with the fireplace burning low, eyes locked on the windows, listening to the storm rage on. Every so often the wind would drop for a second, and every time it did, I could hear breathing. Not inside, outside, slow, patient, like it knew I was there, and like it wasn't in a hurry. I kept the fire going as long as I could, feeding it small pieces so it wouldn't burn out too fast. Every crack of the wood made my shoulders tense. Outside, the blizzard screamed against the cabin like it was angry. I wouldn't come out. The breathing didn't stop. It wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It sounded curious, like something standing just beyond the walls, listening to me breathe back. Sometime after midnight, the wind suddenly died. Not slowly, instantly. The silence was so complete it felt wrong, like the world had shut itself off. That's when I heard it clearly. Footsteps, right outside the front door. Crunch, pause, crunch. Each step slow, measured. I stood up without thinking, my legs weak, my heart hammering so hard it made me dizzy. The front door was solid oak, reinforced when the cabin was built decades ago. I had checked the locks when I moved in. Deadbolt, chain, all secure. The footsteps stopped, right on the other side of the door. I held my breath. Then, a sound I'll never forget. Fingers, dragging down the wood, not scratching, not clawing, just fingertips sliding slowly from the top of the door, all the way down, until they stopped at the handle. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. The handle didn't move. Instead, something leaned closer. I could feel it through the door. The pressure. The weight. And then it spoke. Not loud, not threatening, just close. Mark. My blood ran cold. No one knew I was there. No one had said my name all night. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. Mark, it said again. The voice wasn't distorted. It wasn't monstrous. It sounded almost normal. Almost. Like someone trying very hard to remember how people talk. I saw your light. I didn't respond. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Time felt loose, stretched thin. Finally, the pressure lifted. Footsteps moved away from the door. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out beneath me, gasping for air. I thought it was over. I was wrong. The footsteps didn't leave. They moved. Around the cabin. Window to window. Slowly. Every time they stopped, I heard breathing again. Right outside the glass, close enough to fog it. I stayed away from the windows, hugging the center of the room, trying not to make a sound. Then I heard it upstairs. The ladder to the loft creaked. Once, like weight being tested. I stared upward, my mind screaming that this was impossible. There was no access from outside. No ladder up there except the one inside the cabin. The creak came again, then a soft thump. Something was on the roof. Snow slid down the windows as weight shifted above me, and then it walked, not paced, walked, back and forth, each step heavy, controlled, following the length of the cabin. I grabbed the fireplace poker, my hand slick with sweat, knowing it was useless but needing something, anything, to hold. The footsteps stopped, directly above me. I waited, my chest burned from holding my breath too long. Then the ceiling bent, not cracked, bent, like something pressing its weight down slowly, testing the strength of the wood. A fine line appeared, crawling outward in a thin fracture. I screamed. The pressure lifted instantly. The storm returned all at once. Wind slamming back into the cabin, snow howling like nothing had happened. The footsteps were gone. I stayed awake until morning. When daylight finally came, gray and weak through the snow, I checked outside. No tracks. Not on the roof. Not near the door. Not beneath the windows. Just untouched snow. Except for one thing. On the outside of the front door, 4 long streaks, perfectly straight, like fingers had dragged down the wood, from the top all the way to the handle. I should have left that morning. That's what everyone tells me now. But when you live that far out, leaving isn't always an option. The road that led to the highway was already buried. Snow drifts higher than my truck. No signal. No power. No way to call for help. And part of me didn't want to leave. That thought still scares me. The storm hadn't ended. It had only quieted. The sky stayed low and gray, like it was pressing down on the trees. The air felt heavy. Wrong. I spent the day moving from window to window, checking the snow. Nothing. No tracks. No signs. No explanation. By late afternoon, the wind picked up again. Harder this time, meaner. The blizzard wasn't done. Night came early, swallowing the forest, before I was ready. I lit the fireplace again, but it didn't feel comforting anymore. The shadows it cast on the walls felt too long, too active. Around 7, I heard the first knock. Not at the door, at the window. 3 slow taps. Glass on something solid. Tap, 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 tap. I stood frozen, staring at the dark pane. Snow clung to the edges, but the center was clear-like. Something had brushed it away. I stepped closer, and shouldn't have. On the other side of the glass was a hand. Long fingers. Too many joints. The skin looked pale, stretched thin, almost translucent. Veins dark beneath it, pulsing slowly. The fingers pressed against the glass, and then they curled, like it was testing the thickness. I staggered back, my heel catching on the rub, nearly falling. The hand didn't follow. Instead, it slid away, not down, sideways, disappearing out of view. Then came the sound, laughing, soft, low, close, not outside. Inside the walls, it traveled through the cabin, slipping through the wood like sound through water. It echoed from room to room, never settling in one place. Then it stopped. Silence again. I stood there shaking, convinced I'd finally lost it, until my radio crackled on. I hadn't turned it on. Static filled the room, then slowly shaped itself into something clearer. A voice. My voice. Mark, it said calmly. You can see us now. The radio went dead. That's when the windows began to frost from the outside in. Not from cold, from breath. Every window. At the same time, circles of fog appeared, blooming outward like something was leaning in close to look, watching, waiting. I backed into the center of the cabin, spinning slowly, trying to watch them all at once. Then the front door creaked. The deadbolt turned. Just a little. Not enough to open. Enough to let me hear what was on the other side. Breathing. Multiple breaths. Slow. In sync. Then a new sound, a voice I didn't recognize. We've been walking a long time. Another voice joined it. The storm helps us move. Another. You left the light on. The handle twisted, stopped, twisted again. The chain rattled but held. I screamed for them to leave. I don't even remember the words, just panic spilling out of me. They laughed, not loudly, like they were amused by the idea. Open the door, one whispered. We're cold. The windows behind me cracked, not shattered. Cracked, thin spiderweb lines spreading slowly across the glass. I turned just in time to see shapes forming in the frost. Faces, too smooth, eyes too dark, pressed against the windows from the outside, smiling. I ran to the bedroom, slammed the door, and shoved the dresser against it, and crawled into the corner, clutching my phone, watching the battery drain. Outside the bedroom door, footsteps gathered, not pacing, standing, waiting. Then one final sound, a knock on the bedroom door, gentle, polite, and a voice that sounded exactly like mine said, "Mark, you're safe now. Let us in." I don't remember falling asleep. I remember my eyes burning, my body shaking, the sound of breathing on the other side of the door never stopping. At some point, exhaustion won. When I woke up, everything was quiet. Too quiet. No wind, no knocking, no voices. Just silence so deep it rang in my ears. For a long moment, I didn't move. I waited for the breathing to start again, for the footsteps, for something. Nothing happened. I checked my phone. No signal. Battery nearly dead. Gray light leaked through the bedroom window. Morning. I pushed the dresser away from the door, every muscle tight, expecting resistance. The door opened easily. The cabin was normal. The fireplace had burned down to ash. The windows were intact. No cracks. No frost. No faces. I walked to the front door. The deadbolt was unlocked. The chain hung loose. My stomach twisted. I stepped outside. The storm was gone. The sky was pale blue, the kind that comes after heavy snowfall. Trees stood frozen in place, branches heavy with white. The world looked peaceful, clean, but the snow around the cabin told a different story. Tracks, dozens of them, all around the cabin, not random, not scattered. They circled it perfectly, every set the same length, same stride, same depth. They didn't wander, they patrolled, and every track faced inward, toward the cabin, toward me. I followed them with my eyes until they stopped, at the tree line, all at once. No tracks leading away, but they had simply disappeared. I didn't go back inside. I grabbed my keys, my coat, and ran for my truck. The road was still rough, but passable enough. I didn't care if I got stuck halfway. Anything was better than staying. As I drove and kept checking the mirrors, nothing followed. No shadows, no movement. By the time I reached town, the sun was fully up. People were out shoveling snow. Cars moved. Life continued like nothing had happened. I went straight to the police and told them everything. The storm, the voices, the tracks. They listened, took notes, asked questions. Then one of them asked me something that made my chest tighten. "Sir, are you sure you were alone out there?" They showed me a photo. Old, black and white. A group of people standing outside a burned-down hunting cabin. The same location. The report said it burned during a blizzard nearly 40 years ago. No survivors. The cause was never determined. Witnesses claimed people were seen walking around the cabin during the storm, even after it collapsed. I never went back and moved states, changed jobs, changed routines, but sometimes during winter storms, when the wind gets loud enough, I hear footsteps outside my apartment window. Slow, crunching. And once, just once, I saw a shadow pass across the glass. Tall, walking easily through the storm, like it was looking for somewhere warm. To this day, the police never found evidence of anyone else at that cabin. No footprints that made sense. No signs of forced entry. No explanation for the unlocked door. Officially, nothing happened, but I know what walked past my window that night. My name is Ethan, and this happened in late January a few years ago in the Midwest. I was driving back to Ohio after visiting my sister in Michigan. Nothing unusual, nothing reckless. The forecast said light snow, maybe a little ice. I'd driven through worse. That's what I told myself as the sun went down and the highway lights blurred into long streaks through my windshield. About an hour into the drive, the snow changed. It didn't fall anymore. It came sideways. The road disappeared into white, and traffic slowed until it barely moved. Brake lights glowed red through the storm, fading in and out like warning signals. When the cars finally stopped completely, no one honked, no one yelled. We all just sat there. A highway sign emerged from the snow ahead, barely visible. It pointed to a rest stop less than a mile away. That sign felt like permission. I followed the line of cars off the interstate and into the rest stop parking lot, snow already piling up around the tires. Inside, the lights were on. That mattered. The building felt solid, concrete walls, bright fluorescent lights, warm air pushing back the cold. A place meant for situations like this. There were about 10 of us at first. A truck driver rubbing his hands together with a cup of coffee. A young couple whisper arguing near the vending machines. A woman with 2 kids bundled up too tight. An older man sitting quietly on a bench, staring straight ahead. Someone said the interstate was being shut down. Someone else said state police would come once the storm eased. It all sounded temporary, manageable. The wind slammed into the building, but the walls didn't move. The heat stayed on. Phones still worked, mostly. We settled in, charged our devices, shared snacks, tried to make jokes that didn't quite land. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, it felt distant, until the power flickered. Just once, enough to make everyone look up. Then it came back. Someone laughed. No one else did. The snow didn't stop. Hours passed, maybe more. When someone cracked the front door open to check outside, the wind nearly tore it from their hands. Snow blasted inside, stinging our faces before we slammed it shut. You couldn't see the parking lot anymore. Just white, endless white. That's when we noticed how quiet it had become. No traffic, no engines, no plows, just wind and the building creaking under pressure. Then came the knocking. 3 slow knocks on the front door. Not loud, not frantic. Calm, measured. Everyone froze. Someone whispered, asking if it was a joke. The knocks came again. Same rhythm, same spacing. A man stepped closer to the glass and squinted through the snow. "I don't see anyone," he said. Another knock, this time from the side door. The woman pulled her kids close. The arguing couple stopped talking. The older man on the bench finally spoke. "Don't open it." His voice was steady. Before anyone could respond, the knocking moved again. Behind us, 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. It was circling the building. Phones came out. Calls failed. No signal. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness. Someone screamed. Phones lit the room and scattered white rectangles. The emergency lights never came on. In the dark, we heard footsteps. Inside the building, slow, heavy, wet. No one was moving. The footsteps stopped right behind me. The air felt colder there. Then a voice whispered my name. Not shouted, not guessed, spoken. I didn't answer. I didn't breathe. The lights came back on all at once, blinding. There was no one behind me. But the older man was gone. The bench was empty, his coat still folded neatly beside it. No footprints, no sound, just gone. That's when panic took over. We blocked the doors with benches, trash cans, anything heavy enough to slow whatever was outside. We stayed in the center of the room, backs together, watching every entrance. The knocking returned throughout the night, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent. Once, a voice begged us to open the door. A man's voice, freezing, crying. He said our names. We didn't move. Time stopped meaning anything. Phones died. The clock on the wall froze. Eventually, the knocking stopped. The wind faded. When we finally opened the doors, the world was buried. Cars half swallowed by snow. No footprints leading away. State troopers arrived hours later. They took our statements, counted us, twice. They said no one else had been reported missing, no records, no cameras, no explanation. The report said we were delayed overnight due to weather, nothing more. But every winter, when snow hits the highway just right, I remember that rest stop, the knocking, the voice, and I still wonder if whatever was outside that night ever really left, because to this day, no one knows what really happened. Two winters ago, I worked the night shift at a storage facility outside a small town. It wasn't a bad job, quiet, mostly boring. My job was simple: monitor the cameras, log late payments, and make sure nobody broke into the units. Most nights nothing happened. Just empty hallways, rows of metal doors, and the hum of old fluorescent lights. The facility itself sat right off a highway surrounded by forest. During the day, you could hear trucks passing every few minutes. But at night, it was just wind and trees. And in the winter, the wind never stopped. The night everything happened started with a storm warning, a big one. The weather forecast said a blizzard was coming in fast and most businesses were closing early. But the storage company never shut down completely. Someone always had to be on site. That someone was me. Around 7 p.m. the snow started falling. At first it looked harmless, just small flakes drifting through the parking lot lights. By 8 the wind picked up. By 9 I couldn't see the road anymore. The snow was coming down sideways, slamming against the office windows hard enough to rattle the glass. I called my manager and asked if I should close early. He laughed and said the storm would probably pass by midnight. He told me to just ride it out. So I made coffee and settled into the office chair, watching the camera feeds. The facility had 20 cameras covering the rows of units and the driveways between them. Most of the screens showed nothing but blowing snow. White streaks across empty pavement. Around 10:30 the power flickered, just once, long enough for the monitors to go black, then come back. I remember staring at the screens after they turned on again. Something felt different. At first I couldn't figure out what. Then I noticed one of the cameras showed a unit door slightly open. Unit B14. I leaned forward in my chair. That door had been closed earlier. I was sure of it. The wind must have blown it open. That happened sometimes if the latch wasn't secured properly. So I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The cold hit me like a wall. Snow blasted across the lot so hard I had to squint just to see a few feet ahead. The rows of storage units looked like dark tunnels stretching into the storm. Metal doors rattled in the wind. The sound echoed down the aisles in a way that made the place feel much bigger than it really was. I walked down the row toward B14. My boots crunched through fresh snow. The beam of my flashlight bounced across metal doors and drifting flakes. When I reached the unit, the door wasn't open anymore. It was shut tight. I stood there for a moment confused. Maybe I saw it wrong on the camera. Maybe the wind had slammed it shut. I shrugged it off and headed back to the office. But when I got inside and looked at the camera again, my stomach dropped. The door to B14 was open, wide open. I stared at the monitor, then slowly turned my head toward the door behind me. The wind outside howled through the building. I told myself it had to be a camera glitch. The storm was probably messing with the system. Still, I grabbed my coat again. This time I walked faster. Snow had already started piling up in the driveway. The storm was getting worse. When I reached the unit, the door was open again, but not just open. Bent outward, like someone had pushed it hard from the inside. I shined my flashlight into the darkness. Storage units always smell the same. Dust, cardboard, old furniture. But this one smelled different. Cold, metallic, like something had been sitting in there a long time. I stepped inside. Boxes stacked along the walls, plastic bins, a mattress leaning upright. Nothing unusual, but the floor. The snow had blown in across the concrete, and there were footprints leading out. Only one set, bare footprints. I froze. No shoes, no socks, just the shape of toes pressed into melting snow. And they led straight out of the unit toward the row behind me. I turned slowly. The wind screamed through the aisles, but the footprints kept going, one step after another, vanishing into the blowing snow. I walked back to the office faster than I meant to. By the time I got inside, my hands were shaking. I kept telling myself someone had broken in. Maybe a homeless person hiding from the storm. That would explain the footprints. But when I checked the cameras again, every screen showed empty aisles. No movement, no people, just snow. Then the power flickered again. This time the lights went out completely. The office fell into darkness. The only light came from the emergency exit sign glowing red above the door. Outside, the wind roared louder than before, and somewhere out in the rows of storage units, I heard a metal door slam, then another, and another, like something was running down the aisles, opening them one by one. I held my breath. The security monitor beeped as the backup power kicked in. One camera came back online, then another, then another. And on the last screen, I saw the footprints again, except now they weren't leading away from B14. They were leading toward the office, step by step, fresh impressions appearing in the snow, getting closer, but there was still no one there, just the prints forming, one at a time. Right outside the office door, the handle slowly began to turn. I backed away from the desk. The door creaked open a few inches. Wind pushed snow across the floor, and for a moment I thought I saw something standing there, something tall, something pale. Then the lights flickered again, and the doorway was empty. I didn't wait to see more. I locked the door and spent the rest of the night sitting under the desk, listening to the wind and the sound of storage unit doors slamming open across the property. When morning finally came, the storm had buried the entire facility under 3 feet of snow. The police arrived around 9. I told them everything. About the footprints, the open units, the thing outside the door. They searched the property for hours, checked every single storage unit, but they never found anyone. And here's the part I still can't explain. When they checked the snow outside the office, there were no footprints. None. Just smooth, untouched snow stretching across the lot, like no one had walked there at all. To this day, the company still uses that facility. New tenants rent those units every month. But B14? It's still empty. And sometimes during heavy snowstorms, the cameras still show that door opening by itself. If you want to hear more real-life horror stories, then subscribe to the channel.